Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Welcome back from Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, it looks like people have been visiting each other. Ariana's got the family watching. We better do good, you know? She's like, I hope these guys don't screw it up and this gets weird or anything like that.
How was your holiday? Welcome, everybody. If you're listening on Facebook, welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody from Happy Girl Kitchen, who sent me a box of delicious jellies.
I have to thank Happy Girl Kitchen, too.
These guys are great.
That's Jamuna Devi Dasi, correct?
From Northern California.
Because she sent me 2 packages but they were sent to the Bhakti Center, so I hadn't gotten them, and now I finally went there and picked them up, and wow, what creativity!
Incredible
and
stuff.
Yeah, beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
Happy
And
Girl
also,
Kitchen.
I was taking shelter of the Bava Wellness Immune System Builders yesterday.
Raghunath, are you doing paid advertisement without telling me? Because when you do the Baba Wellness thing, you really go off. Yeah.
Hi, this is we're sponsored today. Today's show is sponsored by Bava Wellness. Bava Wellness in Tucson, Arizona. Well, I will say that I did do intense immunity building yesterday, because I was feeling the sniffies coming on after all this. I was very strict with what I ate, but I just dosed myself with fire cider.
I think you have to drink it. You
elderberry.
don't pour it over yourself.
You don't bathe in it? Well, I bathe in it too.
Okay.
And I think it's even better. But they're long-time listeners. Anybody who's got shows out there we like to support, and they give us discounts. Right. Wisdom of the Sages on the coupon code, all caps, 30% off. And I'm so happy I'm stocking up. Thanks, everybody from Tucson, BabaWellness.com. And I had a great Christmas with the kids. It was great. And my wife is so good at decorating things. She could wrap up an onion and make it look like this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She's just good at wrapping things. Okay. So we had a very magical Christmas time.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm doing good.
It's good to be here on Question Day. If you're listening to us on Facebook, we do this every day practically, but Saturday and Sunday we go on Facebook and we do live interviews and questions. If you want to join us on our regular Zoom, with our regular Zoom crew, you can listen at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You just got to email Mara to get the codes. That address is wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Is our website up?
Yeah, the website's up. We got to put a little work into it, but it's there. All right. So it's at wisdomofthesages.com.
All right.
And we want to make it a little bit more. We want to add a little bit of information. We have to add information for the recovery groups, and we've got to make it a little bit more. What do they call it? So that when you use it on your phone, responsive, right?
Responsive.
So we got a little work to do on it, but it's up there. So
great.
Want to go get some T-shirts or a tote bag or
tote? Wisdom of the Sages tote.
Yeah.
And Mara is in Puerto Rico. You can see sunny and beautiful there.
Living the life.
She's bronze.
Bronzing over there. We should mention that tomorrow we have our interview at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and with special guests will be here.
Oh, special guest Ram Roy.
That's right, Ram Roy.
I've shared a closet with him. Now,
You lived in that closet
Now,
in
many
Boston
of you
with him?
think if you share a closet with somebody, like, oh, we put your clothes in the closet. No, I lived in the closet with him in the Boston ashram for a few days.
The two people don't fit in that thing.
Oh, you could fit in that thing.
You slept in there?
Slept in that closet with
Two
Ram
people
Roy.
slept in that closet?
Yeah, this is how brahmacharis live. Like, he claimed that closet as his apartment, and
I
it was like
remember
a
that.
tiny closet.
Yeah. And you stayed in that closet too.
I stayed in that closet. He welcomed me in. He had me in for like a cup of tea or something, and
Okay.
he's a very sweet guy.
But he's like he's been a monk since the late 70s. He's incredibly, he's like a real New Yorker for real, right?
Yeah,
But he's incredibly learned, and he heads up like the taking the kirtan out to the streets of New York for many years now, right?
Yeah.
He has a lot of
Very
deep realizations about bhakti, about Vrindavan.
We spent a long time in Vrindavan with
Yeah.
the great kirtan master Ayendra.
Right. So we're going to talk about Ayendra Prabhu. We're going to talk about Vrindavan. We're going to talk about Bhagavatam, which he's great. He's a Bhagavatam scholar.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about, the Yuga Dharma, taking the kirtan to the people.
Yeah. And today we have some good questions.
All right.
Questions. Where did we go? There we go. Grab to the forefront. Now, this is the first question, is a green question. We color code them.
Yeah.
Kaustubha color codes them for me because I'm a very simple man.
And Mara sends me like, here's all the question, and like here's a bunch of questions, and then I color code them and arrange them. But I sent the first document rather than the second one, so he got the non-color coded one. Raghu got it, and he was lost.
I was lost out there. I was just wandering
said,
around
"Where are the
streets
colors?"
this morning. Where's the colors? I can't do anything without the colors. All right, so this is a question we could both answer.
Yeah,
Following
green means the two of us.
Yeah. Following King Parikshit's story.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you know the story, we're following an ancient story, the Srimad Bhagavatam. So following the king's story, if you were cursed by a Brahmin's son and only had 30 days to live, what would you do? So the king was cursed to die in 7 days, but now
We got 30.
Harshal Gore, our friend from England, who asks a question a week practically, he's saying, well, what would you guys do? You got 30 days to live.
Right.
From whom would you want to hear from? Where would you want to be? What would you give up? Is there something you want to tell the world or leave a legacy in some way? You got 30 days, Kaustubha, go.
Well, should we? Why don't we work through them one at a time? How's that sound?
All right.
All right. So then you got 30 days. What scripture would you want to hear?
I would listen to. I would read from the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam every day.
10th canto.
10th canto of the Bhagavatam is all the stories, all the Krishna's pastimes and leelas.
I wonder if we're dying together in 30 days or like. Are we
I wonder if he's a Brahmin and he's cursed us. Was that a curse, Harshal?
Because if you're going to read that, then I'll read that with you.
Okay. All right.
But,
so yeah. If it's our last 30 days together, we shouldn't be fighting over what we're going to read.
That's true. Whatever you want to read.
I just fought with Kaustubha for 30 days.
So 10th canto, that sounds like a good choice to me. That's all. The 10th, there are 12 cantos, but the 10th canto is 1/4 of the entire Bhagavatam. And it's all Krishna's life. So yeah, that sounds like a good choice to me. Maybe a little Chaitanya Charitamrita too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's our scripture. From whom would you want to hear from?
Well, if I'm with you, I'll hear from you. We can go back and forth.
All right.
We can go back and forth, read to each other.
But you can reach higher than that. We could both hear from others too.
Well, I don't know. I feel like in such a situation, Krishna would send somebody to speak to me.
Okay. I would reach out. I would reach out to Raghunath Swami first and foremost. And say, Maharaj, I got 30 days left. Help me.
Help me. Okay, that's reasonable. That's very reasonable. Okay.
Where would you want to be?
I'd like to be in I'd Govardhan Hill.
Govardhan Hill?
Hill. Yeah.
Okay.
Govardhan Hill, sacred place of
makes
pilgrimage.
Sense. Okay, okay, Govardhan will work. I was thinking Mayapur, Vrindavan. Govardhan Hill works for me too. I mean, it's in the larger Vrindavan, Vraj area.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sacred place, sacred people, sacred books, what would you give up? Well, what would you give up?
Yeah. I mean, I would have to give up all nonsense, like immediately, very strictly, right?
Yeah.
Like there would be no internet surfing whatsoever. There would be, you know, no
Amazon Prime.
no Amazon Prime, no Netflix.
What can I get? I got 30 days. What can I purchase?
Yeah, there would be nothing like that.
Yeah, it would be. I would give up all talk
Yeah.
coming out of my mouth,
Yeah.
non-related to the destination where I want to be
That's
when
right.
I leave my body.
Okay.
And I'd speak incredibly kindly, give up all types of finding fault, criticism, giving my big fat opinion on things, and just really, really dial up respect, giving dignity, and hearing sacred literature.
Okay, I'm with you right there.
Yeah.
Is there something you would want to
I'd probably
tell the
give up. I'd probably give up a lot of time that's going to make my body in more like
You'd eat less?
I'd eat much less, so I wouldn't have to.
Well, you're kind of on a roll right now, so I don't think you could do too much less than you do now.
Is there something you want to tell the world, or leave a legacy in some way?
Well, 30 days isn't a lot of time to leave a legacy, so whatever I've done, would have to stand on its own, I think. But I would hope that when I'm in that position, that I would feel happy, and I would be fearless. And I think if I could show that to the world, that would be a nice thing, right? But I think that would be part of a broader message that I would like to be able to honestly share. That it's something like you make a decision to give your life to God, and to center your life around God. And to whatever extent I've done that in my life, I've benefited, right? There's been no loss from it. We shouldn't be afraid. Like, we should be courageous and make that move, because to whatever extent I've done it, I feel it's been to my eternal benefit, and hopefully in that position I could say, and that's why I'm dying in 30 days. I'm okay with it. I feel happy. I feel focused. I feel connected. I feel good. Something like that.
I would. Yeah, it's like, okay, it's my last days.
If this is what you'd be like, Baba Wellness.
Baba Wellness. It's all you need to BabaWellness.com, Tucson, Arizona. Here's the coupon code Wisdom of the Sages, all caps. 30% off for all our listeners. Goodbye. I'm gonna die. No, it is. I would write a letter to each one of my children and my wife, and I'd explain to them what I've done right and what I've done wrong in this life, and I'd have them open it after I die.
Why don't you write that letter right now?
I'm already thinking about it. I think it's important. Mm-hmm. Write them a letter, tell them how you feel about them, and then tell them their sort of the absolute statement. I love you. I believe you were sent to me, but then tell them the absolute statement. I don't own you. We come together for a few days. All we can do is give love. All we can do is assist each other on a spiritual path. This world is temporary, with all its excitement and romance. It's a very temporary place. Let's focus on what's really important. Be connected. Find people in your life that assist you to become connected. Don't get lost by life's diversions, and maybe paint out the pictures where you've done wrong and what you've done right. Yeah, and that in itself is sort of a legacy that you can leave to your children or your family and your spouse.
All right.
It's beyond just being sweet. It's also like laying some heavy truths down as well, mixed with some sweet.
It's I've seen people that it's interesting when someone gets a disease, like a devotee gets a disease, and their death is coming, right? Yeah. And when they're focused and they're clear like that, it's almost like in our eyes their status just starts to go straight up, right? And they start to speak, even if it was a person that was very much your peer or something like that. Suddenly you're looking at them in another way because they're standing at the precipice, and you see that what they've invested in their spiritual practice is the fruits of it are manifesting through their clarity and their fearlessness and their insights, and they're not, and in that position, they're not. They've let go of all the temporary considerations, right? Like all that's kind of dropped,
Right.
and you're seeing their pure intelligence just shining, and they can, and people that seemed something, you know, I don't want to say they were ordinary people, but that seemed more ordinary, are suddenly the words that are coming out of their mouths are like the words of the great Acharyas or the words of the great spiritual teachers, you know?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to see.
It is a beautiful thing. Cultivating what we're doing here every day goes great with getting old.
That's right. And nothing else
they
does.
go great together. They go great. Like if I was doing like, these evil Knievel type of motorcycle tricks, those don't do good with you while you get older. Your bones get broken. You have more injuries. Those don't do well as you age. But things like studying wisdom, applying wisdom, working on your meditation, working on your concentration and focus, giving to, as you get old, those things become very, very valuable, have a very high return on investment.
Right. You are on this morning, Raghu.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're on. I think you had a good Christmas.
It's going to be the best year of my life, I've decided. And, you know, that's why I thank all the Makeover Monday people. I thank all those Makeover Monday people because
thank you, Makeover Monday people,
because they inspired me. Because it was one of those things where like, well, okay, New Year's Day, I'm gonna do a cleanse, and it wasn't. I was like, no, I'm gonna do a cleanse. I'm gonna do it right this moment, right now. And so I've just decided that 55, I'm gonna take back control of my senses, which have been dominating my life, and I'm just going to
take the power
best
back.
Year ever. Yeah, me and Kaustubha are both turning 55 in January.
That's right.
Excited for it.
Okay. All right, I got a question for you. Thank you, Harshal Gore, for that question.
That was a good one.
Good contemplation there. Good to think about. You know, there's that film that I saw. I forgot what it was called, but it was it was really funny. It was a comedy about these people in Ireland that they win a lotto ticket or something like that. But a person has to pose as someone that died so that they can collect. That's what it was. A friend of theirs died, and they had to pretend that they were that person so that they could collect that person's lotto winning, right? And so in order to do that, they had to pretend that they died and they were the person that was alive, and they were the person that died. And so these two friends are doing it together, and so one of the friends is at the funeral of the friend that's still alive because they're pretending that he's dead. And then he begins to speak, right? Glorifying his friend as if he had just died, right? and he shares all those things that, you know, you don't normally share with, you know, like a lot of people would never share with a friend, that they would only say after the person's died.
Right.
And it was a real sweet scene. But it is important to think like Harshal bringing up this question, like to think about death and think about what we want to say before we die, you know, and then to start saying those things now. And again, like, you know, what would you do if you had 30 days left? What wouldn't you do? Well, all those things, I pretty much shouldn't be doing them right now, right? Like anything,
right?
You know, that I'm saying, you know, and we are, you know, we do have our weaknesses and so on, and.
Well, it's the mindset of the transcendentalist is keeping our temporality at the forefront of our mind.
There you go.
Not to be depressed, not to be goth, but to understand, like,
it's the truth.
I don't want to waste any time. Yeah. I've been wasting time. I've been wasting resources on, you know, I'm putting the least important things first in my life, and we gotta, you know, put the first things first.
There you go.
And
the temporality, it grounds you in truth, right?
Right. That's why I collect skulls, Kaustubha. That's why I collect skulls.
Okay.
How many
Putnam
skulls do you have? Ken Putnam wrote me and said he also collects skulls too.
How many skulls do you have?
I've got lots.
You never counted? How many?
My prize collection is a whole entire skeleton, mummified skeleton of a bobcat, which I found in a barn. It's unbelievable.
Okay. You got a little catacombs going on there.
The idea though is that when you see a skull, this thing had a life. It had dreams. It had hopes that are all gone. And my skull is the same way. Someone's going to look at my skull one day, perhaps. Shakespeare would look at that skull on his desk and think, this was a person with hopes and dreams, and this is going to be me in a moment. What am I doing in this short life? What am I supposed to be doing? I've invested so much on skincare products, hair care products, getting the shave.
Are you about to do another Bava Wellness thing? Just
listen, Bava Wellness, all you need to do is put that coupon code in, Wisdom of the Sages, all caps, and you'll get 30% of all their products.
Okay. All right, here's another question. This one, I'd like this question. I love the mood of this question. And it's a serious question that's, I'd imagine, on a lot of people's minds. Okay? This is coming from anonymous listener via podcast page. Mara, what does that mean, podcast page?
It comes into our email, but it says, I think there's a way to send a message if you're just listening to the podcast.
Okay.
Like you can send us a message that way.
All right. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Anonymous person writes, I am one of the occasional others who loves your podcast when I actually get time in the day to listen to it. All right. In fact, it's played a significant role in helping me take a leap into bhakti. Well, that's great to hear.
That's great to hear.
Anyway, I digress. I was listening to your question from Anonymous last week, which really piqued my interest about how to make relationships work when one person is in a relationship, when one person in the relationship doesn't follow bhakti. And remember we had that question, and I read from Jamuna Jai. So you have a relationship where one person's practicing bhakti, one person's not. And so she's asking about this. She says, this is a bit of an awkward one for me to discuss, but how do you make it work on a gulp sexual level? You're not meant to have sex unless you're procreating. And so I'm concerned that by continuing to have that kind of relationship, I'm somehow sinning. Quote, she says, quote, sinning. Can you tell I have a Catholic heritage? If I were, okay, now we can narrow down anonymous, right? We can narrow down Catholic heritage, okay. If I were with a partner who also followed bhakti, it might be easier. My husband is totally supportive of my spirituality and wouldn't want to step in the way of that. But I think if I said no more sex, ever, he would be pretty upset. We have 2 sweet children, but the idea of more doesn't really appeal to me at the moment. I hope this question isn't too inappropriate. It's not inappropriate at all, right? It's just
I'll be the judge of that, because I'm the one answering. I'm about to give an anonymous answer.
Okay. I hope this question isn't too inappropriate, but it's something that really concerns me. Thank you again for all your awesome work. You are a blessing to people like me, a spiritual anchor when it can all feel a bit overwhelming. I'm not sure if you ever got the message I sent through the site about my crazy Krishna miracle. I'm not sure. And how a podcast of yours played a massive role in my getting serious about the path of bhakti. But I thank you again for that and broadcasting around the world. Anonymous listener. All right, Raghunath.
Let the Krishna miracles continue.
Okay.
Wow, that's a great question. It's a very sincere question.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we are on a path. I will say, in the biggest picture, marriage is when we have that container of marriage, it's a massive responsibility, not just to each other, but the whole deluxe package, which is we have children involved. That family sets up a foundation for these kids' spiritual life and for their stability in this world. And it's like such a sacred contract. Even if people are on a strict spiritual path, like the husband is not, or the spouse is not, things like sexuality regulate themselves anyway, because some person might have a higher sexual desire than the other anyway. So sometimes we talk about regulating sex, but at the same time, sexuality will naturally regulate itself. Some people aren't interested.
Hold it. Wait, really? It just regulates itself?
Sometimes it tends to regulate itself. It happens when you have children. You're just like, if you were very sexually active, sometimes you have children, you just don't want to have sex anymore.
I see. So you're saying that as you grow older, it may kind of.
Well, as you grow older, so also your passions change too. Mm-hmm. And things change from the different time you're dating for a year. It's going to be one of these things that's going to be different for every couple. And every couple, there's no one set of answers, because you might be very detached. But if your spouse is very attached, then that's going to be a problem somehow. But I think that's also part of any type of relationship. There's certain things that your definitive knows, and certain things that you draw the line in the sand with, and there's certain things that you work out amongst each other. And that's part of not just sex, that's part of diet, that's part of do you want alcohol in the house, or do you allow smoking or vegetarianism? And I've seen serious devotees who've been practicing bhakti for a long time, they work those things out. What I find is Maya has a special trick. Maya has a trick to say, this isn't the right person. I knew it. It's easier just to sort of break up. And what Maya likes to do is for us to just break commitments, because it's really easy to live whimsically within our mind. So I find it more important to keep that container of marriage incredibly sacred and just make it work somehow. And sometimes you can't, obviously. There's sometimes things that are just like too much and you can't. But I think it's a very, very valuable thing. And I think today we take it cheaply. We treat it like a Dixie cup. And I think these things have to be figured out personally between husband and wife, or maybe with maybe with some type of spiritual counselor. And it's not just bhakti. People have been asking this question, for years. But at the same time, yeah, as you get more into bhakti, everything sort of changes. But your desire for what if you enjoyed going out to a bar and getting drunk, that changes after a while. You're not going to like that. So your spouse is going to be like, man, you're not fun anymore. And they're going to have to come to a decision. What's up with my spouse? She's not fun anymore. She used to be lots of fun. But if you put a marriage first, then these things tend to work each other out. And when we had Jamuna Jaya answer that question the other day, she has a very, very mature understanding of marriage. And it was very beautiful to witness that. And we're not but then again, I want to also say that even people who are strict on a bhakti path, I've seen people who have the same guru, I've seen them get divorced in a moment anyway. So it's sort of like, I think we have to I think we got to get serious about life and not treat things that are sacred in a disposable way. And so many times you hear from reading Vedic teachings that there's a power that comes from commitment. Because from commitment, we learn to control the mind. Because the mind is always looking for some way out. And commitment helps control the mind. And we read in the Mahabharata, Grandfather Bhishma, he was just focused on commitments, on vows. Even sometimes they seem incredibly impractical. But those vows keep you strong and keep the mind working for you instead of you working for a whimsical mind. The mind makes a lousy boss.
Duty is
a great servant.
That's why I say duty is the first. What is it that I say? I guess it's totally slow.
What do you say?
Duty is the first step in mastering the mind.
Yeah, thank you, Mara. Duty is the first step in mastering the mind.
Mara quoting Kaustubha. She's got the book of Kaustubha quotations with her now.
Duty is the first step in mastering the mind, and so therefore duty becomes important in marriage, and how you behave in a marriage is a duty, right? And I guess what I'm taking from what you're saying, the idea that sex within marriage and then only for procreation, that's a very, very high standard, right?
It's for people who are completely off the bodily platform.
Or at least that are getting real serious about being off the body platform.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like what you're saying is the commitment to one person. That's a real good. That's a a good gate entrance level. I have one person in my life. You're that sacred person. You're that person I share intimacy with. And so if you're doing that, you don't have to be racked with guilt or anything like that.
Yeah.
If that you're living a good, solid standard, a standard that's going to be good for your practice of bhakti. And as you grow older, if you more mature into, stricter standards or something like that. And again, this is not. It's not like just because sex is evil or something like that. But the point is that we tend to search for happiness through external things, through the senses of the body, and when we do that, we tend to lose touch with reality. The reality that happiness is ultimately something that lies within, and sexuality is a powerful way that we lose touch with that reality.
and it's the greatest height of sensual experience. But as we get more and more attached to that, the body starts to give its own limitations to it as well. The
You don't need to
ceiling
fight that.
Yeah, the ceiling becomes much lower to enjoy through the senses. So therefore, it's a poor investment. The better investment is figure out what is that internal way to actually enjoy. And some people figure that out at a very young age. And some people, we desperately try to hang on to that as we get older. But it's a sucker's bet. We can't win. I mean, I know I can't eat that much anymore. I used to be able to eat tons, feel great, look good. It doesn't happen anymore. If I eat off diet at all, I feel it. And I can only eat maybe one big meal a day. My digestion is a lot weaker in this age. My passions minimize. You know what I mean?
And the yogi just goes with that, right?
Huh?
And the yogi just goes with that.
A yogi goes with it because they've been cultivating a detachment their whole life. If you've been cultivating enjoyment through the senses, as I get older, it'd be frustrating. This is frustrating. I can't enjoy as much. But if you've been cultivating detachment this whole time, then you think, oh, thank God those passions have subsided.
This is great.
It's great. Thank God. Woo! When I was a teenager, I was nuts. We're almost like we're possessed.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Can I hit you?
Hit me.
You?
Hit me.
Can you speak of the role
Hold
of
it.
grace?
Who are we hearing from? Who are we hearing from?
This is it's from David Cameron.
Daily Zoomer.
A daily Zoomer and a model for our T-shirts.
That's right.
Can you speak of the role of grace in spiritual practice? Orthodox Christianity teaches that we are saved by the grace, meaning it's not our efforts that cleanse us from sin, but God's efforts on behalf via Christ. I was struck the other day to read this line from the purport of Canto 2, Chapter 9, Text 31. Here's the quote. The Lord informs Brahma that knowledge of him, the supreme absolute truth, cannot be understood unless one is self-realized by the grace of the Lord. There it is. There's grace there.
Grace.
My heart leapt when I read that. Since yoga is primarily about spiritual disciplines, we talk mostly about what we need to do in order to attain Krishna consciousness. Can you talk about what Krishna does on our behalf so that we can attain Krishna consciousness? Does God reach to us as we reach to God? David Cameron,
question.
Daily Zoomer. He is a daily Zoomer.
He is. So, this is bringing up a, what's the word? Not dichotomy, but like when you got these two sides of an equation, right? It'll come up commonly in spiritual traditions. Is this all about the grace of God, or is it all about our hard work to attain higher spiritual levels of accomplishment? I feel that within certain branches of the Christian tradition, this has been really warped, where they say it's all about grace, right? And therefore, it really doesn't matter what you do. As a matter of fact, you're completely hopeless to change, we're all sinful by nature. It all depends on grace, or even they'll say faith, right? You just have to believe.
You just believe. You believe, and then you're saved.
And then you're saved, and it doesn't matter.
You know what I always say that? I always say, okay, I believe.
But if you don't, it doesn't make
I should say it.
But but if you try to understand, you could take a couple quotes from the Bible and draw that conclusion out. But you would have to limit how much in my view, would be an inaccurate or even an insincere attempt to understand the full message of what Jesus was teaching. Because if you see how he taught, he was telling people to change their lives, drop everything, change your life. He was quite demanding, actually. And in the same book, you'll also find that it says faith without works is dead. So if you actually really have faith, it'll be demonstrated through your behavior. Now, within the Bhakti tradition, the Vaishnava Bhakti traditions, I mentioned this before, in South India, there's one lineage, or sampradaya. We used that word the other day, right? Takeaway word, sampradaya. There's one lineage, the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, which stems out of South India. And there they have, there's kind of two headquarters to that lineage. One is in Sri Rangam, You've been to Sri Rangam before, right, Raga?
Never been.
Never to Sri Rangam.
Never been.
We gotta go.
I know.
Yeah, sure. And,
It's on my
and
bucket
then,
list.
Have you been to Kanchipuram?
Now.
Okay, so the other one is in Kanchipuram. And so so there's two, it's kind of like two branches of the same lineage with different emphasis, right? One branch really emphasizes grace, and one branch really emphasizes one's effort, one's own effort. And they call these the cats and the monkeys, right? So, and we can understand because like a baby monkey, which is something you don't see in America too often, but in India you can see it all the time. When a mother carries the child, the baby monkey is underneath the like they kind of run on all
gripping
fours.
gripping the tummy.
Yeah, gripping, up around, like latching around the torso, you could say. But the baby is hanging on itself. The mother's not hanging on. The baby's hanging on. It requires the effort of the baby. Whereas with the kitten, the mother cat, it picks up the kitten from the scruff of the neck and carries the kitten entirely, and it requires absolutely no effort from the kitten, right? So one of those lineages emphasizes more the grace of God is how we, ultimately understand God and achieve the highest levels of spiritual realization. Whereas the other group emphasizes, the monkeys, they emphasize more the idea that it really requires our own serious, stringent efforts to achieve these higher states of awareness. Now, in the lineage that Raghunath and I come from, it was really kind of, it was said both, right? The great teacher said both. And they take this story of where Yashoda, Krishna's mother, is trying to tie him up. And so there's a metaphorical meaning to this, meaning like if you want to capture God, capture God's heart, tie him up, so to say. That, Mother Yashoda, she gets some rope and she's trying to tie him up, but it's not enough. So she adds some more rope to it, and she tries to tie him up again, and it's not enough. And each time she does it, it said it's 2 fingers too short, right? Like you're trying to bring the ends together, and you could fit 2 fingers between, 2 fingers too short. She adds more rope.
What do those 2 fingers represent?
What do they represent? They represent one's effort and ultimately the mercy of God. Right? So she was giving all her effort, and then eventually Krishna allowed himself to be captured. And so that's really what it's about. Now, we need to make an effort, but actually anything we do, even the smallest thing, we do by the grace of God, right? I'm lifting.
But there's an effort. I mean, everybody's here. They're listening. It's 8 a.m. on a Saturday. They could do anything they want. It's the day after Christmas. They could be eating leftover pastries. You know what? They're here listening to the Bhagavatam, and that's effort.
Okay,
that's
well, hold
effort.
on. But first, I want to talk about grace. Because like even their effort to do that is granted by grace. Like I'm lifting up this pair of glasses, right? How do I do it? I see I could drop it at any moment. But how that actually happens is there's a little desire in me, and then somehow the material energy facilitates. And ultimately, the material energy is God's energy. Ultimately, it's being sanctioned that my desire is being fulfilled. And at any moment, that ability could be taken away. So I do put in some effort, but ultimately, even that happens by grace. What to speak of understanding God, the most personal and intimate and confidential understanding. I can't just fight my way into that. That's only revealed by the grace. But who receives that grace? Who actually, that special grace to know God, right? That's not ordinary stuff. Krishna will call that the most confidential knowledge. It means not everybody's getting it. Now, it's available to everyone, right? But who receives that grace? In what sense? It's received by those that put in the effort, right? That really, it just like, again, the sun is shining down on everyone. But if I don't go out of my house and get in the sun, then I don't receive the benefits of those rays in the same way. And so similarly, God's grace is there for everyone, but it's received by those who really put in the effort through their practice. And what does that effort look like? Really, our efforts to be great yogis, to sit silently for a long amount of time, to be incredibly sense-controlled and so on and so forth, we generally tend to be really weak at that, particularly us, people of the modern Western world, But really what the effort that we can put to receive that grace is the effort to remain even-minded, right, amidst the constantly shifting world. The effort to act always as a kind friend to every single living being, right? The effort to be tolerant and easily satisfied, under all different kind of circumstances. And the effort to always fix one's mind on God, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, to be able to see everything in connection with God. That's the kind of effort we put in. That's what our practice requires. And all the rules and the regulations and so on and so forth that we put effort into, they're all meant to bring that mind to God. And if we put in that effort, then we can receive that grace. But without that grace, we're nothing. So Krishna says towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita, I believe it's text 1858. He says, "Much tata sarvadurgani mat prasadat tarisyasi," right? That if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all of the obstacles of conditioned life, mat prasadat, by my grace, by my prasadam, right? By mat prasada. And then he says, if, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So our effort is to bring our minds to God, and we need that peaceful mind to do that. And that means we're satisfied easily, we remain even-minded, we relate to every living being with kindness, with friendship, with tolerance, with forgiveness. That's the kind of mind that will receive that grace. And without that, we're not so receptive. So the grace is there, but we also need to put in effort. Both are required.
Both are there.
Both
Good.
are there. Okay.
Good.
I hope that's helpful. All right, now I got a question for you.
Hit me.
It's a short question, but it's a good question. It's coming from Greg Bursey via email.
Greg Bursey via email.
Do you know Greg?
No.
Okay. Well, then here we go. We get a chance to answer a question for him. I've only focused on the Bhagavad Gita and Canto 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's what he's been reading and studying. Are there
There's a lot there.
There's a
in
lot
those two
there.
books.
Are there any other books I should be learning to help me with the fundamentals?
Well, great question, Greg. Those are very weighty books. To read the Bhagavad Gita and the first canto, the Bhagavatam, are very weighty, and a lot of people can't even make it through the Bhagavad Gita. They just start and they're just like, this is too much. It's too thick. So I think that listening with or studying with like what you're doing now, if you're listening to Wisdom of the Sages, it will help you decipher those. I personally always recommend Radhanath Swami, our teacher's story, A Journey Home, which is an incredible book. And then he has a second book, A Journey Within, because I find it to be an easy read, but it's peppered with very, very valuable philosophy. Again, I think it will help you deeply understand those books that you're reading. If you want to get into more scriptural things, a great book is Nectar of Instruction, which was written by the great Saint Rupa Goswami, who was a disciple of Sri Chaitanya. And it's a very small book, Nectar of Instruction, but it's very digestible and relevant and practical, Nectar of Instruction. And then a bigger book is called Nectar of Devotion, which translates to Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is a little bit more of refined details of bhakti and how to apply bhakti in your life, especially the first half of it. And that's a great book to dive into as well. But I think just reading Gita and First Canto are very, very big, and they're great mountains in themselves. But I'd go there. Nectar of Devotion, Nectar of Instruction, and both Radhanath Swami's books are great additions.
All right.
Here's one for you from Jason Starkey. He's a regular guy around. This was from Discord. In the Nectar of Instruction, page 27, it says, there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure bhakti. Number 6 is following in the footsteps of the previous Acharyas or masters. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure bhakti. I am wondering what it means to follow in the footsteps of these previous acharyas. Like, what's the difference between following and imitating? I think about, like, say, that's how I speak. I think about, like, say, the number of rounds Haridas Thakur chanted. So Haridas Thakur was a great saint. And he
Do you know how many rounds he chanted each day, Raghunath?
Something like 48 lakh, something like 48,000, 100,000 rounds.
Yeah, he chanted 190 rounds a day.
190 rounds. Yeah.
Which,
when do you have time to go to the gym?
Well, actually, that's roughly, that takes about 24 hours to do.
Takes 24. I know I wouldn't be able to chant that much, but if I try, is that imitating or following? That's a good question. What's the difference between imitating and following in the footsteps?
That's what he's asking.
Great question.
Okay.
What would you say about that?
Well, I would say that, Prabhupada told a story. I'm going to share a story, okay? It was in a slightly different context, but I think it would be valuable here. He told a story about, and I think I've shared this story before too, but I'll share it again. All right? Ready for a story, Raghu?
These stories are meant to be repeated again and again.
Okay. So there was a veterinarian, and he had an assistant. And the veterinarian was called to a farm, and there was a horse there, and the horse was just lying on the ground, just looking really bad, and it had a swollen neck, like really badly swollen neck. And so the veterinarian took a look at the horse, and the assistant, the apprentice, was watching what the veterinarian was doing. And then he looked inside the mouth of the horse, and he felt around the neck a bit. And then he turned to his assistant and said, "Bring me my medicine bag." And he reached in there and he pulled out a hammer, of all things, right?
A hammer.
Yeah, and he went right to the neck of that horse and he just started beating on the neck of the horse with a hammer. Seemed like a very
Don't try this at home.
Seemed like a very unusual way to address this horse's ailment. But almost miraculously, like almost immediately, the swelling just went down and the horse just jumped to life and just started running around and was like perfectly good. And then what happened is that shortly thereafter, the apprentice left the veterinarian and started his own practice. And the word came to the veterinarian that your assistant, he's going on and he started his own practice and he's just like doing damage wherever he goes. He's like hurting animals and killing animals and people are complaining. And he said, "Well, what's going on? Bring him to me right away." So he brought the apprentice back to him. And and he said, "What are you doing? I'm hearing all these stories that you're hurting animals. You're not even trained properly. What do you?" He said, "Well, I'm just doing what I saw you do. I take out the hammer and I hit him on the neck, He's like, "No." He's like, that was a very rare instance. That horse had swallowed a watermelon and the watermelon was lodged inside its throat.
Yeah, horses do that a lot.
Right? And so I had to break up the watermelon. But that you can't just, that doesn't work in every case. You can't just imitate what I'm doing, right? You have to actually understand the whole science of veterinarian science to be able to apply this stuff. You can't just imitate. You actually have to really learn it, So the point is, he was imitating the external behavior of someone that knew more than he knew, right? But he didn't know how to apply it. He would have been better just following the instructions of that veterinarian rather than trying to imitate him. And we can easily do the same kind of thing in our practice of bhakti or in our practice of spiritual life, right? So, and one of the most common ways that this plays out in spiritual practice is the imitation, and he mentions Haridas Thakur. Now, Haridas Thakur is a super important saint in the bhakti tradition, and he's called the Nam Acharya, that when it comes to the meditation on chanting the names of God, that he's the teacher of it. He's the exemplar of it, and he used to chant. He would chant basically 24 hours a day, right? But if you look at his life, you can see he was not ordinary in any way. Haridas Thakur was beaten in 21 marketplaces, and then when the torment, he was beaten just because he was born in a Muslim family, but he was doing they would call the Hindu Dharma. He was chanting these mantras, and the Muslim leaders said, "Oh, well, then he should be made an example of, and he should be severely beaten till death. Take him to every marketplace in the area, publicly beat him, so that everyone can see that this is what we do to a Muslim that practices the Hindu Dharma." And they kept beating him, but he wasn't dying. And the people that were given the task to beat him, they became afraid that we're beating you and you're not dying. We're going to get in trouble now. And he said, "Oh, well, if that's what you want, then I'll die." And like, in other words, after being beaten so much, he was actually concerned for those that were beating him. And because he was such a yogi, he could kind of like almost like, appear dead, with no life
fake that
sentence.
stuff. You're getting beaten, and you're sort of internally smiling because you're so detached from your body.
Yeah.
You can't imitate that stuff,
can't-
but you can like sort of learn from like, wow, this is where this can all go.
Well,
you're actually completely detached from the body.
That's one example, right? Another example was also because he was practicing the way he was practicing, there was also a leader, like political leader, that saw that this saint is becoming too influential. He hired a prostitute to go and try to seduce him and expose him, right? Now, Haridas Thakur, the prostitute was incredibly beautiful and seductive, right? And she was like, she came to his hut and she was just praising him, and striking different poses and doing all that she could.
Poses.
Right? Yeah, she was doing all that she could, and he said, this is how he handled it. He said, you are very beautiful, and you're inviting me to enjoy sex with you, and that's all great. But the only thing is, I need to finish chanting my rounds, so I'm going to ask you just to sit down and be patient, and allow me to chant my rounds. When I'm finished, I guarantee you, I'll satisfy you. I'll satisfy you. So she sat there, and he just kept. But the point is, he never finishes chanting his rounds. Right? He goes 24/7, and so.
And by the association with him,
that's the point.
She started becoming devotional. It brought all these incredible devotional sentiments
right.
within the prostitute.
She was so impressed with him that she became influenced by him. And actually what happened was he left that place, left her his little hermitage. She shaved her head. Right?
She became a great
and she became a great saint.
Yeah.
Now we can't imitate that, right? It's like that's a person. So now if I say, I want to be like Haridas Thakur, let me just chant 24/7. I don't have the mind that Haridas Thakur has, right? I don't have, my mind would be too disturbed to be it's not the right practice for me. It's not the right prescription, because I don't have the qualification of the deeply peaceful, undisturbed mind that he has, right? And so I can't imitate his behavior. I have to follow what he teaches. Now, this also plays out in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna's thinking, I just want to wander off and avoid the duty that I have, right? And be like one of these yogis in the forest. And Krishna says to him, Karmanya Vedakaraste, that your adhikara, your qualification, Arjuna, is for karma, is for work, is to be active, not to renounce everything, right? And he'll say in the 3rd chapter that he said that if someone's out there in the woods and they're doing their meditation, externally, they appear to be very renounced, but they're meditating on the same stuff in their mind, that you can't imitate, He says that's mityachar. Mithya means like false, and achar means behavior. It's like it's a pretender. It's hypocritical. It's phony. It's a facade, right? So the Bhagavad Gita, especially the first 6 chapters, a lot of them is about not imitating the stereotypical spiritual person, imitating someone's renunciation, but being engaged in a sincere practice that's appropriate for you. And one can practice severe renunciation only when they have a mind that's entirely undisturbed, Otherwise, you sit there and you look like you renounce, but you're not. And you and I both, anyone that's been practicing this for some time, we've seen many examples of people that artificially practiced renunciation and collapsed,
Sure. I mean, it's one of those things you see. If you put in a little bit of time, you see people go through these because there's a type of enthusiasm. Like I want to be more advanced than I actually am.
Yeah.
And
And
they
it
start
looks
letting go of
impressive.
things that they're actually very deeply attached to.
Yeah. Rather than regulate them in following. Now this is following, right? Ultimately, Krishna lays out a path for Arjuna to follow. It was a path where he embraced his duty as a warrior, but also combined that with deep spiritual insight. And if and by following that path, Arjuna, achieved his spiritual goal. So that's, there's your difference between following and imitating. Imitating means I'm looking at what's happening externally and I'm putting on the show, but internally I may not have changed at all. Following means that someone, it's just like with a doctor, like the medicine, like say you have a healthy person, like a real healthy person, and then you have someone that's not healthy and they need to take a particular medicine. And let's say that medicine is like unpleasant to take. And if the unhealthy person says, well, look at that healthy person. I want to be a healthy person. That person's not taking medicine, so I won't have to take the medicine. Right. No, you're not as healthy as them. You need to take the medicine, So Bhagavad Gita helps one understand that a lot. And again, in those first 6 chapters, which emphasize karma yoga meaning doing a yoga where you don't renounce the world, but where you embrace your social duties. You may not look like the great renunciant. You may be a family person, having to earn money, et cetera, et cetera. You have to, but by embracing those duties and hearing the right information so that you can adjust how you see the world as you embrace those duties and adjust your purpose or your intention behind those duties, then you have a very powerful, effective spiritual practice there. And that's called following. Right?
Such a great point. It's like people think, okay, in order to be a real Bhakti-yogi, I got to give up my career and become a yoga teacher. Wrong. There's so many great spiritual beings we know that are so many different walks of life. So many different walks of life, but they've learned how to apply spiritual principles to their life, to their career. Sometimes they might have to quit their job. Sometimes they realize this is completely against what I want to be. But sometimes they just have to adjust a little bit. And it makes all the difference in the world. And the universe will use your particular situation to purify you. You don't have to give up your job or your family or anything like that. You just have to give up that, it's time. We just have to give up that sense of, I'm the controller. It's all about me. We have to see ourselves as part of something bigger. And I want to be more of a contributor instead of a taker. Thanks for everybody for joining us day after. What a great year it's been.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean.
Okay.
What a crappy year. But it's been a great year. Thanks. I really want to thank everybody on this show for keeping me connected with the accountability of sacred literature. So in that sense, it's been sometimes these dark places bring you to something very, very high. So thank you very much, everybody. I'm really looking forward to 2021. And I want to thank everybody that's been with us on Zoom. If you want to join us on Zoom, Facebook people, come on, join that club. Email us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Mara will send you the secret link, the secret codes. Also, if you like what we're doing, support us. We really appreciate it, and we need it. That is, you can just go to patreon.com/wisdomofthesages, where you can give us, you could just write off half your paycheck right to us. You can do it like that, any way you like. Or you can give us any type of precious jewelry or bitcoins we're accepting this year in 2021.
Okay, Raghu, stop talking about money. Move on. If someone wants to leave a one-time donation, what do they do?
Or a one-time donation. What's that?
Go to bhakticollective@gmail.com.
You can make a
PayPal.
one-time collection, a collection donation, and thanks. So now what we do every day, we get to do this. We dance and we sing and we lip sync.